Welcome to In the News for October the 14th, 2022. My name is Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hi, Brett.
If you got a new Apple Watch, Jeff, maybe just consider not wearing it on a roller coaster. I thought this was quite the story reported by one of our favorites here, Joanna Stern at the Wall Street Journal. In fact, last week we talked about an awesome little like demo derby experiment that she was doing with the Apple Watch to see if the crash detection was working. Right. And it was interesting. There was a couple of things that we talked about last week where she was finding that it would normally work or it wouldn't work, unless the phone knows you're moving. But she uncovered this week that apparently if you're on a roller coaster, sometimes the iPhone may think you're in a crash, and it potentially could call 911 in that circumstance.
Exactly. I don't know if it's all roller coasters, but she did find one at the Kings Island that I guess just the way that it accelerates and decelerates and stuff like that could trigger, outside of Cincinnati, could trigger the crash detection. And it was sort of interesting that they said over a period of time they had gotten 6 false 911 calls, all of which, when you listen to the recordings of it, it's clear that it's somebody on a roller coaster, which is interesting because, like, if you're on a roller coaster and your phone is starting to call 911 with the countdown timer, you're not going to even notice that that your phone is doing it.
You're not looking at your phone.
Exactly. But it is interesting that there's, and that Apple must have tested for some of this, but I guess just in some circumstances, if it's the wrong way, it's very, very interesting. The thing that I found, this whole series of stories, the one that Joanna Stern did, and the one that you're showing that Brian Heater at TechCrunch did, what I thought was interesting about it is I learned something new about how this feature works. If I had engineered it with my, zero engineering background, what I would have said is, if you stop real fast, if you decelerate real fast, that's what triggers it. Right. And it turns out that is part of it. But actually, this article realizes that there's a lot more to it. The Apple folks that he interviewed described that, first of all, there's a new gyroscope so that it's much more sensitive at sensing acceleration and deceleration. Okay. That part makes sense to me. But he said that it does other things, too. He says that they also they use the gyroscope. They use the accelerometer. They use the GPS to determine that you're traveling at high speeds to begin with. And this reminds me of what Joanna Stern's video showed last week. That if you were just sitting there stationary and then suddenly there was the movement, it would assume that maybe you're just in a parking lot or just, that it's not a part of the traveling process. It also detects changes in pressure that occur when airbags are deployed. My goodness, I didn't know about that. And they also say that they listen to sound too to see if they hear something. So they monitor for the sounds of a crash, which I guess maybe being on a roller coaster with the loud screaming and all the background noise, maybe that would sort of be similar to the sounds of a crash.
True.
It just goes to show you that this is a lot more, as you would hope, this is a lot more sophisticated than you might first think as to how this is triggered, which hopefully is going to reduce false positives and false negatives. I mean, not that you could ever reduce it completely. And I would certainly rather them have, 1 or 2 mistakes, especially once 911 folks, understand that there are devices out there. It's not just the Apple devices. Google's Pixel phone can do this as well, that they can understand that maybe there's some false negatives, because obviously if there's something really bad that happens, you want them to be able to get help to you so that you can meet it and try to save your life. But it's just fascinating to me from a scientific standpoint how this stuff works. It's very sophisticated.
It also seems like this is one of those things that it's probably going to improve with
surely
being used in the real world. In fact, this is actually interesting from the fact that the iPhone crash detection worked, but another story you linked to ended in tragedy, unfortunately, that people like there were 6 folks in a vehicle that ran into a tree, and unfortunately all of them were lost, but there was a 911 call that happened from the scene, right? Because it detected that it was in a wreck. So it's things like this.
And that's a call that wouldn't have happened otherwise, obviously.
Correct.
So 911 did find out about it. Unfortunately, when they turned up, there was one person still alive, and they didn't make it to the hospital. So it's a horrible, tragic result. Yeah. But it does show you that it can work in the real world. And obviously, if things had changed just slightly in that fact pattern, that scenario, you would hope that maybe some of the people could have lived because they had been saved in time.
Looking at the story from TechCrunch that you linked to, they have some little video snippets that Apple, I think, included in one of their commercials announcing this, right? The crash detection. And looking at these pictures, Jeff, I have a quick conspiracy theory on this now. I'm like, okay, this is obviously a huge track area. It looks like out somewhere in the desert that Apple had set up. I mean, maybe they just did it for the commercials. I don't even know. But I'm looking at this. It looks like it's on an old runway or tarmac or something. I don't know where this in the world this is or anything. But I'm thinking to myself, you know, if Apple was actually developing an Apple car, they would have to have a location where they would need to be testing out a lot of these things, right? Now you see where I'm going. And it's like, maybe the crash detection, while looks like it's going to be really fantastic, obviously, when you need it, it's maybe this is a little bit of a cover up. It's like just to say, hey, we're working on this. This is what we've been working for. But who knows? Maybe in the secret layers of, you know, in the Sonoma Desert, maybe somewhere that Apple has this. Okay, we can move on from crash detection. But I just was thinking about that as we were moving. But that is fascinating. I'm so thrilled that you linked to that. We can go from Apple car conspiracy theories to AirTag conspiracy theories. Actually, I don't know if this is even conspiracy so much, but I saw these headlines bounce back and forth, and you had a great story that you linked to about Lufthansa apparently was going to ban AirTags from their flights. And then they weren't, and then they were again, and then Apple said no, and somebody said something. I don't know. Maybe you can straighten it all out for us.
It was a lot of back and forth. This article that I linked to does straighten out, because I heard it at first. I thought it was just a conspiracy theory, like you sort of said. I thought it was like rumors, but then like somebody eventually, like the official Lufthansa Twitter account said, "Oh yeah, AirTags do not comply with the requirements that we have for baggage." I'm like, what? Like nobody else has said that. And then of course, you know, Apple issued a statement, as did Lufthansa, saying that no, you know, these basically are okay. You know, it's interesting. You know, I know that there is a sensitivity to things with batteries and stuff like that inside of luggage, but the battery in an AirTag is a CR2032 watch. It's a watch battery, for goodness sakes. It's not going to blow up an airplane or anything like that. It's crazy. And it's ironic because of all the places where an AirTag can be useful, putting it in checked luggage. I mean, you and I have reported on story after story of airlines that have lost luggage, and it's only because somebody had an AirTag that they were able to say, "Hey, it's over there. It's in that building around the corner on the left." Otherwise, the person may have never gotten their luggage back. So I think that's a great use of AirTags and checked luggage. So, you know, it's what can you say about this?
I'm glad we got this ironed out, because I saw the headlines at first too, and I didn't really have time to delve into it, and I figured that you would have found it and we would have been able to talk about it. But I'm so glad that it went back and forth. Didn't you use AirTags a few months ago? You had a trip to Europe, right, Jeff? Were you using the AirTags for that same purpose?
Yeah. We didn't check our luggage on that trip, which was a whole other thing. To be in Europe for a couple of weeks without checked luggage, you got to pack very economically. But but even so, I did have them with them. But yeah, we definitely use them. In fact, another feature that I test all the time, I test unintentionally, is my wife will sometimes travel up to New York to see her mom, and sometimes she'll take quote unquote my luggage that has my AirTag on it, and when it does, she ends up getting this alert that, oh, somebody's AirTag is traveling with you. She's like, I know, it's my husband's, it's fine. But I got it. So that feature definitely works too, but because you never know when you're traveling, even if you intend to keep your luggage in the overhead compartment, every once in a while, you know, you're told you got to check it and those sorts of things. So it's nice to be able to keep track of it and stuff. So you know, I mean, if you use AirTags for nothing else, I mean, you can buy one of them for what, $20-25. That is a perfect, and you can get a little holder for it for like $8 on Amazon to stick it on your luggage. If you do nothing else with AirTags in your life, that's what I encourage you to do.
Well worth it. Well, we're not even to our In the Know segment yet, but this story that you linked to, I thought it's chock full of mainly two incredible tips on using the iPhone's camera, which I think you have to have at least an XS, right? Because it takes advantage of the chip. You can take a picture of signs to get live text translation as well as conversion. I cannot wait to try this out, Jeff. This is great.
Yeah, and it really works. Like if you just hold up your iPhone, if you have a relatively new one, and you don't even have to take the picture. Just if you're pointing your camera at something, let's say for example, you're pointing it at some text, and the text says something like, I don't know, 74 degrees. You can just point at it and tap on 74 degrees, and in the bottom right corner, there's a little button that's got, you're showing on the screen right now. It's got like a I don't know how you describe the icon, but it indicates it's
like some text with corners around it or
exactly.
something. I mean, it's a yellow button. You can't miss it.
There you go. So just tap on that in the bottom right to turn it yellow, and that will say, hey, this is the text I'm looking at, and it will give you the option right then and there. Do you want to convert this from Fahrenheit to Celsius? Do you want to do other things with this data? Do you want to copy it? And it also works for currency conversions and for language conversions. And it's neat that I don't know how much Apple really intended this to be a feature of the camera app. I really think it's more a function of Apple has made this this technology of sensing numbers and words and data and translating. They've made it available to all the apps. So even you and I could probably develop an app that we sell in the App Store of, convert text from English to French, because all the stuff's built in, right? Apple's giving you the tools to do it, but that means that it works in the camera app too. And for the translation one, for example, if you use Apple's translation app, which is also free, Apple's I think it's what's called Translate or something like that. It's a little bit better formatted for taking text and translating it between languages. So you'll get a better experience there. But you could also do it in a pinch in the camera app, which is neat.
Wow.
So it's just really cool stuff. Definitely take a look at this article and try it out if you're listening to this, just so that you know that you can do it in the first place. And then maybe at some point in the future, when you just have a quick need to do it, just you're looking at something anyway, and you want to quickly translate it from numbers or from words. It's really neat stuff.
I like that. Number one, you can point it at something, just like you're saying, Jeff, so that if you got some text or, just a sentence that is maybe in English or Italian or something, you don't want to translate it, you can just point the camera and kind of do all of this in real time. But I think at the bottom of the article, doesn't it say if you already have a picture in your photos roll, right, that you took a couple of days ago or whatever, you can pull up that picture and use the same thing. Is that right? Or did I misread that on there?
I think so. I think you can also pull it up from your photos roll and do the same thing. Yeah, because once the image is there, whether it's live or something you took a picture of, I think I mentioned this in a past podcast, but I'll mention it again. Before I came in this morning, I went and got myself some coffee downstairs at the coffee place, and they have one of these rewards programs that, like, you buy a certain number, you buy 9 coffees and your 10th one's free, something like that. And the way they do it is they have like these words that are, on the bottom of the receipt, and you have to type them, and they're words that don't really necessarily make sense together. So to put this in the Clover app, which is how I get the credit, you could sit there and type it. But for me, I just, when I'm on that little text input field, I just tap the little icon to have my phone take a picture of it, type it in there. I mean, it gets it in there in about a second. If I had to type it, it would probably take me like, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. I don't know. 10, 15 seconds versus 1 second. It's a minor thing, but it's the convenience and it's the accuracy. And I would have messed up one of the letters. Whereas the iPhone doesn't.
And you have to do it again.
A simple little example, but the idea that the camera has these sophisticated tools for sensing when it is quote unquote looking at words and numbers and knowing what to do with them, super useful, and it's going to get even more useful in the future.
Well, like I mentioned just quickly, this works with the A12 Bionic chip, the article says. Okay. So you have to have an iPhone XS or newer. And I'm just going to go in and make sure that I've got this set. You have to make sure it's turned on. I think it is by default. You go into you go into your settings, it says, and then down to your camera. Okay, good. And you have to toggle on show detected text. But just go through and read this article. I just thought this was fascinating. I think I kind of knew that this was available. We've talked about, the live translation and the live text feature, but just to be able to use this in like a more kind of a practical aspect just was fascinating to me. I'm so glad. It's
interesting that it's an option, because I can actually see that if you don't use this feature, even though I think it's useful, you actually might want to turn it off, because I can actually see how it could be confusing to some folks that when you're showing the camera, it sort of overlays, like it's looking at the images and the words. And some people could say, oh, that's sort of getting in my way. I'm just trying to take a picture of a menu, and I don't want to read it necessarily. So that's nice that Apple gives you the option to turn it off if it's not something that you use. But for me, I'm definitely.
Apple and Microsoft have always had, should we even call it a love-hate relationship? I mean, I feel like that they've always worked together. In fact, I like to remind folks, like the first Microsoft Word was actually developed for the Mac. You know, and people today would be like, what? You're crazy. Anyway, there's been a long history, obviously, between the companies. But when it comes to software, from one company running on another platform. I guess I don't know too many of like Windows running on Apple, although we used to have Boot Camp back in the day, if you remember, right? You could put a whole Windows environment on your Mac, which really worked incredibly well. But what about Apple's software coming to the Microsoft platforms? This was a good article you linked to from John Voorhees at MacStories. Which I'm excited about. My son has an Xbox, and we use Spotify on it many times, Jeff. But now, you on your Xbox, which is a Microsoft product, you can now install an app for Apple Music. And I thought that was incredible. And then there's another app, what is it? iCloud Photo Library for Windows 11 desktops.
Yeah. So it's nice to have more interoperability. I mean, obviously, you're going to get the best experience with Apple products, you know, if you have a Mac. But some people are, I mean, I'm talking to you on a PC right now in my office, even though I use a Mac at home. And although I don't currently have all of my personal pictures on my work computer, I don't know that I would want that. But if I did own a Windows computer and I wanted to have access to all my photos, yeah, I would think it would be fantastic that when under Windows 11, I guess this part, I think you can do now. You can now use the Photos app in Windows 11 to get your photos. And then in the future, you will be able to use Apple Music and I think Apple TV as well on Windows when you're running Windows 11 on a PC. So that's nice to be able to, you know, have more interoperability. I know a ton of people that use iPhones and iPads use PCs versus Macs.
Exactly.
So it's nice to be able to take advantage of using stuff back and forth.
There was another story here from ArsTechnica you linked to, and maybe this is where I saw it. If you are running a Windows machine, you still can download and install for free the iTunes software from Apple, right?
I think I actually have it on this computer, although I haven't opened it in a while. But it is funny that iTunes does live on. There is still an iTunes, yes.
It does. Now, we say that because most people that if you're using a Mac, you know that Apple did away with that, right? It's not a standalone piece of software. It's kind of built in, and they call it the Music app. But there were two other things, because really iTunes, for both Windows and Mac, was getting very bulky, I would say, right? We used it because I used it all the time to copy files from my computer over to an iPhone or an iPad, right? We used to do that with old iPods. We would buy the music on the iTunes software and then copy it over to an iPod that wasn't connected to the internet. We do that through a cable. But then you could, you know, I used it for file management. You could do it for backup. You could do it for music. You could do it for movies. I mean, there was just so much going on, which I think obviously was a little beyond maybe what Steve Jobs, you know, and the team originally envisioned it for. But like you said, it still does live on the Windows side. And although I know there's a lot of people that don't like it so much, and, you know, I don't know how much it's going to be supported, but it'll be amazing. I think there is going to be a music app coming to Windows, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's it. So you'll be able to have sort of a native Apple Music app. Brett, when you mentioned Steve Jobs and iTunes and Windows, you reminded me of a story that you're probably remembering. This is, I think I've got the facts on this correct. Many years ago, Steve Jobs was talking to, I believe, Walt Mossberg, who at the time was at the Wall Street Journal in one of the yearly conferences. And when Steve Jobs was announcing that iTunes was coming to Windows, that Apple had developed the iTunes software for the Windows, I think that he likened it to bringing a glass of ice water to people in hell. So just to sort of show that friendly rivalry between Apple and Microsoft, even though they've become far more frenemies than you know, and they work together more closely, it's always sort of in the background that there's little jabs. Brilliant. It's like siblings, you know, they've got to have the jabs at each other, and you know, who's better, even though they work together as well. So
that's brilliant. I love it. All right, let's move to Apple Watches, as we are prone to do. We talk a lot about Apple Watches because you and I have Apple Watches, and we've been talking about the Apple Ultra, the Apple Watch Ultra, but we're a little bit older than the usual teenager these days, Jeff. But it was amazing to me to see this story you linked to today, that what is it? 31% of teens in the United States currently own an Apple Watch, and a further 16% plan to buy one. That's a pretty incredible number there.
It is an incredible number. It's so much that I think it might be a little uncredible. I wondered about the survey size of like what population. There's no doubt among the population of people they surveyed that it was this number. I'm sure they're accurately reporting that. Was that representative of the entire U.S. population? I don't know. But the idea that the Apple Watch is incredibly popular among teenagers is, I mean, that I definitely agree. That's what I hear about anecdotally through my own kids. That, and it's just funny to me, and I don't want to sound like the old guys that perhaps I am, and maybe
the old fart
too. But it's like when I was a teenager, I mean, I thought it was so high tech that I had a calculator watch because, of course,
the
nerdy kid with calculator watch. But the idea that you have the power of an Apple Watch. Let alone like the Apple Watch Ultra that you have on your watch, on your wrist, which is like a little computer. That's just amazing. Which reminds me, did you tell me that you're bored of your Apple Watch Ultra and you're sending it to me? Is that what did I mishear you on that?
No, not yet.
Not quite yet.
Not yet.
You're
no, sir. You got to get your own.
Okay.
I'm keeping this one. I got to tell you, just every day. In fact, I was just talking with. Well, I'm going to say his name because it's a mutual friend of ours that very good supports your blog at iPhone JD. It's Ian from Lit Software. Makes some excellent apps for a lot of legal professionals on the side.
Apps for attorneys. Yeah.
But we were just talking. I think I mentioned this either last week or the week before, where both of us are just like, I can't wait until there are further improvements for the face. We've talked about the bigger watch face, and they came out with a new watch face just for the Ultra called Wayfinder because it takes a little bit better advantage of all of the additional space. But we have a lot of these other watch faces that we've used, right, Jeff? And they're all great, except I feel like there's wasted space. And Ian and I were talking about that yesterday. Like, I want to be able to like use all of the additional space on there. And I really think that's going to be coming. They wanted to get it out and see what kind of a response they were going to get on the Apple Watch Ultra. But I'm keeping mine.
I do agree, but Apple has been slower than I would have thought to take advantage of all of those extra pixels on the screen as they've made bigger apps. So some Apple Watch apps do take advantage of the additional space that you get, but others do not. And it's surprising to me that Apple's been so slow in that.
So we've done AirTags, we've done Apple Watches, we have done iPhones. How about doorbells?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. One of these is not like the others, but
yeah. The reason
this is a good story, though.
It's an always relevant story. Is every day different people are expanding the smart home technology, and every day somebody new is saying, okay, now I'm ready to put a smart doorbell on my home. And so if you're ready now, and if you're in the Apple world, you're going to probably want to have something that works with HomeKit Secure Video and works with HomeKit. And so this is a nice roundup of what's out there.
Good overview here.
There are some decent options now, but they're mainly good options if you have a wired doorbell, which is usually not a problem for most people if your doorbell's right there next to your door. At my house, I actually have a gate in front of the steps to go up to my house. And so for us, it made more sense to put the doorbell at the gate, obviously, because the gate's not always, unlocked. And so we didn't have power running out there. So I had to put a battery powered doorbell. And I don't think that there is a battery-powered doorbell that works with HomeKit, with one asterisk.
Oh, interesting.
I think that you can use maybe a Nest product that's battery-powered, but it doesn't natively work with HomeKit. You need to have, and it's described in this article, you need to get like this, they call it, I think it's the Starling Home Hub. It's one of these things that you can also make one yourself using a Raspberry Pi. You're basically tricking the Nest into thinking that it's a HomeKit device. It's not necessarily. I mean, it works for people, and if you decide to go that route. But again, this whole category, I think, is on the precipice of changing, because the Matter standard is just about to come out. I think it's this month or next month. And so I really do feel like in a year or two, I mean, the whole point of the Matter standard is that all of your smart home technology, doesn't matter if you buy it from Apple or Amazon or Google or whoever, it can all interoperate. And so we're going to get to a point where no longer will you need to care. Did you buy the one that works with Amazon Echo? Did you buy the one that works with Google? But then again, if you're looking to buy something today, you can't wait until 2 years from now. You want something today. So this article does a good job of pointing it out. And it's for folks that don't have a smart doorbell, it's really nice to have, because it's you're inside your house, or maybe you're not home at all. Being able to see who is at your door when they ring the doorbell, super useful. I've enjoyed having one for a couple of years now.
We have not jumped into this, and this is like an area that I guess for some reason, number one, I don't know if I have a lot of people coming to my door,
and I don't either, but it does happen sometimes. Yeah.
But what I liked about this is, I know that there have been tons of smart doorbells, right? Is it Ring and several others?
Sure, Ring sort of started the category.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you have to use a specific app with those doorbells. Is that right? I'm guessing. I mean, I don't really know, but I think what I like about this article is that you're saying this is smart doorbells that work with the HomeKit function, right? So that it's already kind of embedded with the other maybe smart devices that you're using in the house.
Right.
And
so if it works with HomeKit, then you don't even have to use the manufacturer's app. You can just use the Home app and look at there. Or you could go to your Apple TV where you can have multiple cameras showing at one time.
Yeah. Okay,
one of them could be your doorbell. One of them could be the one that you have in your backyard. So that's the advantage. For me, if I want to look at my doorbell, I have to look in the specific Eufy app. Only way I can see my doorbell. But if I want to see my other cameras, I can either use the Eufy app, which is the manufacturer that I use, or I could use Apple's Home app, or I could use any third-party app that works with HomeKit. So you get more options, which is, and again, this is sort of what we're moving towards with Matter. You don't want to have different solutions based on what you want it to all work together. That's what you want.
He came to the conclusion that the Logitech Circle View is the best native HomeKit doorbell. There's several others in here. I thought he did a great job, just paragraph each of like telling you from Wemo and Arlo and Nest and all of these. Anyway, great article. I'm glad that you linked to that. Thank you. Now let's go to In the Know.
In the Know.
I'll start off with a tip that we have talked about Apple Fitness Plus quite a number of times. There's a variety of different workouts you can do, right? You can dance, you can do strength training, you can do cardio or HIIT training is what they call it. There's also treadmill and rowing. There's all kinds of stuff. And I got to tell you, I just enjoy using it more and more almost every day that I'm using it. But one of the things I don't have a treadmill in the house that we really use, right? I like to just go run outside. But when I'm traveling and I go to hotels, I don't know my way around outside. So I typically will go to the fitness center at the hotel, and I like using the treadmill. But I tell you, Apple Fitness Plus does an excellent job of doing treadmill workouts. So you can, sometimes you can go higher, higher elevation, you can go faster. Anyway, just a great mix. For me, at least, it keeps me occupied and it keeps me focused, and I really like it. But one thing that they have on things like treadmill and a couple of these other cardio inspired workouts,
the HIIT ones too, yeah,
right, exactly, is the burn bar. Because now when you're doing your workout, you can see how long it's going, you can see your heart rate, you can see your calories burned, and every once in a while they'll show your rings and your progress on your rings. But I love the first time I did a treadmill workout, there was this additional it's like a pink little glowy bar with a circle and somebody running on it. And I'm like, what in the world is that? Well, it turns out it is the burn bar. And I have started loving this thing because it itches that competitive area in my brain, Jeff. It's like I'm not competing in real time with anybody, but the burn bar, how do they describe it here? Is that through a series of calculations, it is determining how well you're doing compared to any number of other people that have completed this specific workout in the past. And I just, once I realized that, I'm like, well, come on, I got to try to be the best that I could possibly be. There are let's see, there's different areas that you can do. You can be behind the pack, and that's if you're really low. You can be in the pack, middle of the pack, front of the pack, or ahead of the pack. And so this little dot goes back and forth on this burn bar, and it's just really neat. Now, if you're not that much of a competitive, freak like myself, you can turn that off. In fact, you can turn it off. I think you have to go into, here's another story that I found. If you go into you have to start a workout, I believe, right? And then in the bottom right corner of the workout, there's a little picture of the phone. You can tap that, and then you can turn off the burn bar if you don't want to see that on there. Or even you can turn off all the metrics. You can customize that. But I only find that you can do that once you started a fitness workout. Like it won't let you, change some of those settings by itself or in the settings app of the iPhone. Anyway, so it's a bunch of little tips on doing that. I really have enjoyed using that burn bar. And then, frankly, just real quick, here's my second conspiracy theory of the day is that I don't have a Peloton or anything, you know, and I know there's several like bikes and fitness things that you can get to where you're in a live class and you're competing against everybody. But I think that something like this with Apple Fitness Plus, this is how they are competing with Peloton and some of those other, you know, high-end fitness things. I have nothing against those others, but the point is I can't take my Peloton bike if I had one when I travel, right? I want to be able to use any treadmill that is available to me, and I want to be able to get access to my fitness workouts. And I think similar in my mind is like how Apple CarPlay works on any car that has Apple CarPlay built in, right? I don't want necessarily a physical Apple car. I mean, I'd probably buy one if it was available, but I don't want one. I want to be able to take my CarPlay experience anywhere. And of course, we saw a little bit of this potentially from WWDC over the summer, where they're talking about, you know, taking over maybe more of the screens inside a car. But anyway, I don't know how far that conspiracy theory is going to go. Probably not very far at all. But anyway, that's my tip for the day. The Barn Bar, which is on the high workouts for like training, interval training, like you said, hit treadmill, cycling, and rowing workouts. You can turn it off if it gets in your way. But I find that even the coaches, Jeff, sometimes will say, "Hey, check out where you are on the burn bar," and I'm like, "Yeah, I already have. Thank you very much." I'm doing everything that I can to stay ahead of the pack.
The thing that I like about this tip, Brett, is that, you know, we all, you know, when it comes to working out, you know, you should be working out. And if you're just relying upon your own self-motivation, you know, you have X level of success.
Exactly.
But what I like about everything that Apple has been doing with the Apple Watch and with Fitness Plus is it's all just, it's these little tricks. It's gamification to encourage you. So whether it's, you know, encouraging you to close your rings every day, just to give you a little extra, to actually get on the treadmill or in front of your Apple TVs, inspiration.
Right.
And the burn bar is the same way. You know, the idea of the burn bar is you're, you know, quote unquote, competing against people that you don't know who they are. And you can see that you're a little behind the packs. You want to go a little faster. And, you know, it's all fake to a certain degree, but and you're smart enough to understand that. And yet it still tricks you. It's like, okay, I'm a little behind. Let me sort of catch up and pick up the pace a little bit.
You're absolutely right.
You know, as you know, I know as I'm using this software, I know what it's doing. I know exactly what it's doing, but it still encourages me to push myself further. And so it works. It makes more sense. I wouldn't be doing this stuff if it wasn't for, you know, the different levels of encouragement. So I like the burn bar for that.
And by the way, we don't know the applesauce, you know, behind this, but it says the burn bar will only compare your progress with others who have the same weight as you do to make it fair. So you're only being compared to people with similar physical characteristics. Like you said, I don't know how they could do that. I mean, I think I did put in my weight, you know, in some, because I have the health app, you know, connected and everything. So yeah, Apple does have access to that, or at least, you know, within the system here. So I would like to think that it is working, but you're right. If I sit there and think about it too long, I'm like, wait a minute. You're just gaming me. I'm gaming you, but you're gaming me, and I don't like that. Anyway, your turn. That was my tip for the day.
So my tip for the week is specifically the 1Password app. But let me tell you the reason I'm talking about this.
Oh, okay.
The 1Password app for the Apple Watch. They just came out this week. It's been on the Apple Watch for a long time, but they came out with a new version. Now, 1Password itself upgraded from version 7 to version 8, I don't know, earlier this year. But what they did this week is they updated the new version 8 to actually have a new Apple Watch client. So if you previously had the 1Password 7 app on your watch, you can delete that now. Put the new one on. But here's what I like about it. The Apple Watch it's a difficult platform to develop for, right? The screen's very small. The processor is only so powerful. You know, there are some apps that, you know, I don't think we were talking about, you know, TrialPad, you know, let's solve for us apps earlier. I don't think there will ever be a time, I don't know, Ian's pretty smart, but I don't think there's ever going to be a time where TrialPad will make sense on my Apple Watch. But there are some apps that do make sense, but it's still, you know, and having passwords on the Apple Watch has always made sense. And it's been nice to have, and I've used it in the past, but it's always been a little limited because the screen was so small. In the new version of 1Password, I feel like it's crossed over. It's crossed over into now it's truly useful, and it's for this one feature. normally when I enter my passwords, I just have them enter. If you use a password manager like 1Password on my iPhone, it can typically enter them automatically. On my computer, it could typically enter them automatically. But sometimes it can't, because sometimes you get to a website where just because they won't let you paste into it or something like that, you have to actually manually type your password.
Right.
When those times happen, this is when it is incredibly useful to be able to, you want to be able to see your password as clearly as possible. And one of the things that 1Password on the iPhone does now is it has this mode where it shows the password in really big type, and the letters are spaced very evenly so that you can clearly see them. So now 1Password 8, show that picture that I just sent you before, which I took from my Apple Watch.
There you are. Look at that.
If you want to type in this password on your computer and you can't type it in automatically, you can just glance at your watch. Now, if you look at the very top of the watch, you see a password like lowercase m, an exclamation point, all these things. And if you're just looking at those letters, your eyes are going to glaze over. You're going to miss one. But what they now do just below it is they put them in a grid. So the first letter is an M. The second letter is a T, and the numbers are different colors than the letters so that they stand out more.
I know,
punctuation size are in red, the numbers are in blue. And because it's evenly spaced, you can so easily glance down at your Apple Watch, see exactly what the complex password is, and type it in on your computer, your iPhone, or your iPad. It is so much easier. This one change to the 1Password app makes it infinitely more useful as an Apple Watch app. And this is what I love. You have to, it's not enough to just put your software on the Apple Watch. You need to come up with a way that truly takes advantage of the, or works around the limitations of the limited screen size and everything else. And they've now done it. So even if you have never thought that having your password manager on your watch made sense, I'm here to tell you it now does. If you use 1Password and you put the app on there, and I literally used it last night. I had to type in my Apple ID password or whatever. So, and I couldn't automatically put that in. So I was just looking at my watch and I could see what it was. And it was a complex password, much like the one you see on the screen behind Brett if you're looking at the video. But I was able to glance at it. And because the numbers and letters are so big, I could see them easily. I could just use the digital crown to scroll. You can see 3 rows at a time. So if your password is 12 characters, then you can see all of it. And if your password is longer than 12 characters, just scroll with the digital crown when, to move down a little bit. It works great. So kudos to 1Password for cracking the code. They figured out the way to bring their app to the next level and make it truly useful on the Apple Watch. I will now be using this app so much more. And I hope that other app developers find equally clever ways to make their apps incredibly more useful on the Apple Watch.
I even like on this picture here, and I know if not everybody is looking at this, but there's no way in the world that you could remember this password. No. So the fact that it has the individual characters there, but it numbers them too, Jeff, because sometimes, when you're typing it in, the password is covered up, right? It's just dots instead.
So you see the dots. So
but you can see how many dots. Exactly.
And you can see that the P is character number 7. It's perfect. Bravo.
Okay. Now, everyone knows we have talked about 1Password for a long time. Now, I want to ask you quickly. I have not upgraded to 1Password 8. I remember a few months ago, there were some people up in arms about the fact that Agile Bits, the developers behind 1Password, they were using some kind of a different technology on the back end. And people were like, it's not going to work as good. Now, I haven't looked into this as much, but you've obviously upgraded to 1Password 8, and I would have to do that in order to get this amazing capability on my watch. Any reasons that you have seen that you've regretted upgrading? I still get all the notifications on my Mac and on my iPhone. They're like, hey, 1Password 8 is available. Click here if you want to download. You can stay on 7 if you want to. But of course, every time I'm like, I'm not sure quite yet. But you're fine with it sounds like.
No, I mean, from a security standpoint, it's all good. The only issue is that, and I don't know if it was 7 or even earlier, Brett, are you using the version of 1Password that you paid for once and you're done, or are you on the subscription where you pay once
subscription?
Okay,
absolutely.
So if you're already on the subscription, there's no reason. Some people way back when were like, "Oh, I don't want to move to a subscription product," but we've sort of that ship sailed a while ago.
Oh yeah,
and no, 1Password 8 is the way to go. I mean, yes, it's true that it does store your passwords on its server, but the way that it does so with it, with hashed and everything else, it's incredibly secure. I have zero. I mean, this is a company that their entire purpose is security. Nobody is going to be better than them at making sure that their stuff is secure. I have far more confidence in them keeping track of it and putting passwords in a secure place than I do somebody that says, "Oh, I have a great system. I put them right here on a Post-it note, and it's only my Post-it note. Nobody else would ever walk in my office and see my Post-it note." Of course not.
Right.
So, so no, I have no qualms. I thoroughly encourage the upgrade. Another thing you might be talking about, Brett, is that for the Mac version, because they were using, and I forget the name of it. It was
me too. But that's where I'm going.
Some people could argue that the Mac version of it, the interface wasn't as nice in version 8 because they're using cross-platform tools so that the Windows and the Mac version look the same.
That's probably what I'm talking about.
I will tell you, it literally does not matter. I use 1Password on my Mac all the time. Never have a problem with you. I use 1Password on Windows all the time. Never have a problem with it.
Yes.
iPhone, iPad, you name it. So
good.
If you're using 1Password, you should definitely upgrade. If you don't use 1Password, if you use the other ones, LastPass, bravo to you for using a password manager. That's fantastic. I hope that you get features like this too. One of the things that I've always loved about 1Password is the company has always been particularly nice. They really like Apple stuff. So I've always felt like the Apple Watch, iPhone, iPad, those versions have always been best in class. If you truly only need a password manager on your PC, well, then I think something like LastPass has got all the features that you would possibly need. But if you do want to have all your different platforms, that's what I like 1Password for.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm so glad, because I said they haven't pushed too hard in saying to upgrade. And I think, anytime it's a major, from 7 to 8, that's a pretty big leap. And I knew the features, I have no qualms whatsoever on the security side at all. Like, I went to the subscription platform a long time ago. In fact, I'll even tell you a quick tip. You can buy gift cards on the 1Password site. And I think if you buy the high-end one, which is maybe $150 or so, they give you a certain percentage off. And I'm like, I do that every time. I am happy to pay money. This is one of the things. In fact, I just remember it worked because when I switched to my new iPhone, I had to re-log into many of the websites and apps that I had been using for so long, which is great because I had to re-log into it, and it was so easy because every single time I would just pull up 1Password, and it was absolutely fantastic. But that was it. Maybe I haven't had time, but man, this weekend is going to be it now. I'm going to make sure that I upgrade to 1Password 8 on everything. Like you said, if I'm already on the subscription, it doesn't cost anything more, absolutely going to that way. And I would say that's the way to go for sure. I want to keep giving them money because I want them to keep developing the great stuff like this. And that tip on that watch is, man, that's the icing on the cake right there. Thanks for sharing that. Very good. All right. I think we covered everything we wanted to talk about this week. So we'll talk to you next week, Jeff.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.